Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Living Astrology with Janet Hickox. It is time to grab your cup of coffee or your tea, sit back and relax while we chat about what is happening up in the stars above us for today, Friday, and through the weekend. This will be a very good day for you to have your astrology chart handy as we're going to take a deep dive into Mars's move through the sign of Cancer. So you'll want to know, where is Cancer in your chart, what planets are in Cancer in your chart, and how the planet of dynamic action, motion, assertion, aggression is going to be impacting you during his move through this sign, which, by the way, is elongated because of his upcoming retrograde status. So, and of course, he's not retrograde up until December. So it's not like we need to worry about the retrograde yet, but because when he retrogrades back to Cancer. You want to, stay aware of what it is that is being brought up emotionally in your life. And obviously, emotional energy is something that is treacherous at times for us. At other times, it's complete joyfulness. And so, how is that going to impact each of you? So, we're going to talk about it in terms of the general atmosphere. Then, we're going to talk about its impact for you personally in the different houses of the chart, which is why it's always good to have your own chart with you. And then we're going to take a look at who's he hooking up with over the next several months that we also need to be aware of, because this is really about a cosmic sort of invitation for us all to connect emotional sensitivity in our lives to action. And Mars is not always very happy in Cancer because he wants action, and Cancer is emotional and slows things down a titch. So we'll take a deeper look at all of that. As well, there are a couple of interesting transits this weekend. Mercury in a square to Uranus in Taurus. So Mercury in Leo, Uranus in Taurus. And I already have noticed an issue coming up. That's actually today, and into the weekend. I already noticed as I was getting ready this morning that my electricity browned out twice. Didn't actually go all the way out, but it certainly sort of started to. And sometimes that happens before we have the blackout. So I don't know. If I disappear, you'll know why. But hopefully, we've got it all together now. And as well, over the weekend, we have the sun in Virgo in an opposition to Saturn, right? So, in the continuing cycle between the sun and Saturn, we had the conjunction back in March, then we had the square, I think it was late May, early June, and now we're coming to the opposition point. So now we're starting to see some of the fullness of what the sun and Saturn represents for each of us and how that's playing out. And as well, on Sunday, Mercury is making his move back into Virgo, but I think I will deal with that during Monday's show because there's so much else that I want to talk about today. All right. So I hope all of you are doing really well. I want you to notice that I actually have put a link in the chat for people who want to join the free Introduction to the Gene Keys class that I am teaching on the 19th of this month at noon p.m. Pacific time. And that will be 3 p.m. East Coast time, and I want to say 7 p.m. UTC time. Now, I recognize that's in the middle of the workday for some of you, so it is also recorded, and the recording will be made available to you uh, in the Thrivecart Academy, where Living Astrology Academy is parked. So you have to register, right? So follow the link and register, even if you're not sure that you're going to be there, because you'll be able to register and set up your Thrivecart account if you haven't already, and then also access that information afterwards. So, woohoo, I'm really excited about this. It is part of a rearranging of the work that I do. And for the time being, September, we're kind of finishing up the summer, and we'll do, things that are coming up transit wise. But from October through December, the focus is going to be on the gene keys. So the first is going to be the introduction to the gene keys. There will be another course offered at that point in time for your deeper dive into the gene keys. So be watching for that. And then as well, we'll talk about the gene keys in a more deeper way, because as we get to the last week of this month and then we start through October and the first week or so of November, the sun begins to move through all of the gates in your human design spleen center, which in the gene keys can show us the shadow energy in a way that is very interesting for us to know, because I always look at those. I like to see, like, what is that shadow? Am I participating in the shadow of that, through fear or any other limitation? And can I move out of the shadow into the gift sequence of the human, of the gene keys? So that gives you a quick idea of what we're going to be looking or doing as time goes on here. And as well, we'll also be doing a look ahead at the astrology of 2025, which, y'all, I just noticed something so freaking fascinating, that Mars is moving retrograde on December 6th. Venus is moving retrograde on January 11th. For the first time in my recent memory, I don't even remember if it's happened yet in my lifetime, those two will be retrograde at the same time, both in water signs. Pisces for Venus, and Cancer Leo for Mars, or Leo then Cancer for Mars. So this is why today's talk might be very important, because it's setting the stage for some things that are coming up from for not only the rest of this year, but the first 2 months of 2025, right? January and February. So kind of getting an idea now is very helpful to how do I move through these things over these next few months. So let's start, though, this morning with the moon. The moon is in Libra, one of the signs of balance and harmony, but also relationships. And remember, the moon is the body of the planet, if you will, that really takes us into our emotions, takes us inward into our inner world, into our intuition, into our gut instinct, right? So the moon, as the ruler of Cancer, becomes an important player all through Mars's transit through the sign of Cancer. So we'll pay attention to the moon, we'll pay attention to Mars, the signs, the houses in your chart where that is. So again, if you didn't see the message first thing this morning, this is a great day to have your chart handy, your astrology chart, this one, right? The round one. So today the moon is in Libra, and tonight at 10:09 p.m. till 10:19 p.m. West Coast time, uh, she'll be in the void. It's a very short, like 10-minute void of course moon, like a blip on the screen. We don't even need to worry about it. Most of you will be asleep. I'll be probably up getting ready for bed or something like that. And the moon will move into Scorpio. So we'll wake up tomorrow morning with the moon in the sign of depth and transformation, death and rebirth, the whole idea of renewal and regeneration. Regeneration, probably the biggest keyword, along with transformation, for the moon's move through the sign of Scorpio, where we tend to want to go deeper, right? We tend to want to look, underneath everything or within everything, in order to get to a deeper understanding. And it is the sign of self mastery in its highest. That is what Scorpio energy is about. And when you can imagine, then, with the moon moving through Scorpio, the self mastery is about your emotions and your inner dynamics. Okay. So self mastery here would be really about how do I respond rather than react to emotional stimulus or to traumas that might be happening in the world or in my own personal life, right? So it's really an invitation to become the master of your emotions And we're going to see this theme several times now through these next several months. So even though, well, Mars is a co-ruler of Scorpio, so it does kind of tie in like these threads of information for us. Now, today, while the moon is moving through Libra, she will come into an opposition to Chiron, Chiron, the wounded healer, in the sign of Aries. So we have an axis here, right? Anytime we have an opposition where planets are on opposite sides of the zodiac, with the sun or with the moon in Libra and Chiron in Aries, they're opposing one another. Then we have this idea of being torn in two different directions, right? Having to come to a middle point, a balance point across the information of that axis, and that axis is about the I am and the we are, right? It's about relationship and yourself in relationship. Now, Chiron brings up the wound, and the wound here could be the wound of identity, not knowing who you are, where you're going. Last evening I spontaneously, as this usually happens for me, spontaneously saw a message on Ancestry, and I reached out to my niece, two nieces, because a picture of my deceased sister from the other family showed up, and I wanted them to see it. And when I reached out to her, she said these exact words: I don't know who I am. I don't know where I'm going. I don't know why I'm here. I don't know what to do. And I went, "Mm, thank you, universe, because you're showing me what some of the themes are going to be for us in these next few months." Now, it doesn't mean all of you are going to be feeling that. Some of you will in some way, shape, or form, right? You might be going, I don't feel good about doing this over here. I want to do this. And you might feel torn between doing what you love or doing what you have to, right? And that presents us with a problem, a challenge to be focused on. And or not to focus on the challenge, but to focus on the solution rather, to that challenge. And of course, that may start this weekend in some way, today, especially because it's activated. It's probably activated at this moment. Um, and some of you may be struggling with that identity, depending on where you are in your own chironic cycle, which is a cycle of 50 to 52 years. So if you're in your young 50s, you are at your Chiron return. So this is starting to take shape in a different way for you, perhaps. If you're younger than 50, this is still maybe a point of wounding in your chart or in your life. And if you are over, let's say 52, you are in a process now of really learning how to share your wisdom and your knowledge about identity and who you are and how to find who you are and how to work through those issues with those people around you in some way, shape, or form. Could be family, friends, work people, neighbors, whoever you're talking to. So today's energy then might feel a little emotional as we work through the idea of identity and being independent, right? There's a whole nother issue there with independence and letting go of codependency, which is the shadow energy of Libra. And also understanding that the shadow of Aries can be over independence. And the true pathway here is interdependence, right? So keep that in mind. Later in the day, the moon will come into a sextile, which is a harmonious aspect or a harmonious relationship between the moon and Mercury. Mercury in Leo right now, and the moon in Libra, having a nice little ability to have a conversation, understand one another, that type of thing. Later in the day, though, we have a square from the moon in Libra to Pluto in Capricorn again, right? Capricorn now for the next 11 weeks, where we're closing out what was about a 15, 20-year cycle of his transit through the sign of Capricorn. And that means that there can be some real powerful transformational energy available to us, emotionally, especially, but also, physically in the practical sense of what needs changing in our lives. Capricorn, right? Pluto and Capricorn. Um, but also that, anytime the moon squares a Pluto, there's this possible power struggle that can show up, whether it's between you and another person, whether it's an inner power struggle between the different voices in your head. And no, you're not insane, right? This is how we process things, right? Sometimes it's this conversation going on in our head space. And that movement through this energy of power or regeneration energy, again, Pluto being the other ruler of Scorpio, can be very helpful in our transition to an emotionally responsive frame of mind or an emotional responsive life, right? Not reactive, but responsive. Okay. If you have any questions about any of that, let me know. Let's just say really quickly good morning to everybody that I see out here. Diana, I said good morning to you, sort of, but hello to you. And then I saw Tom. Good morning, Tom. And Julie, good morning to you. And Tamara, good morning. JLo, hello. And Nargis, good morning. Please remember to hit the like button. Thank you very much. If you're enjoying the video, please hit the like button or hit the what's the other button? Like, share. Hit the share button and share it with your friends. Julie says Cancer South Node in the ninth house. You'll want to pay attention to this today, then, Julie. Tom, I was sitting here waiting and YouTube didn't start the show. That's because I was sort of like, I don't know, I wandered off in my head and looked back and went, oh, dang, it's showtime. So that was my fault, not really yours. Good morning, Teddy and Patty. Good morning, Christine and Christine Ozola. Good morning to you. She says she's so excited for the Gene Keys class. I did see you register for that. Catherine Worcester, good morning, and you're welcome for the link. Terry Strauss, love you too. Great to have you with us this morning. Christine, for how long the retrogrades are going to be? So that's a great question. It is not necessarily something you need to worry about right now, right? Those retrogrades are in tandem. Well, Mars starts December 6th. But remember, he's going to go into the shadow. So we're going to start seeing, the parts of that cycle already activated as early as October, right? So it's coming. It's coming. And then he's retrograde from December 6th until February 23rd. And then Venus, January 11th, goes retrograde in Pisces and is retrograde until February 2nd. But her cycle will also be starting before that, like in December. So we have this piggybacking going on. And essentially, at the time, they will both be in water signs. For the bulk of the time, Mars will be in water. For part of the time, he'll be in fire, right? Just in the very beginning of that retrograde. So we need to understand, all of this information. Good morning, Eileen. Hi, Janet. Mars is conjunct to my natal sun. 5, Mercury 9, Uranus 9, all in the second house. You'll want to pay attention too. Teddy, okay, Patty and I are registered. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe buttons. You guys are awesome. Pauline, hello to you. She says, where is the Black Moon Lilith? What does it affect? I keep forgetting. So the Black Moon Lilith right now she's moved out of Virgo and into Libra. Right now, she's kind of sandwiched between the South Node and Venus at 7 degrees of Libra. And in Libra, she tends to deal with sort of the shadows that we have in our relationships. And the one shadow that, jumps into my mind is this ideal search we have for the perfect mate, the perfect ideal partner, whether that's in business or personally. And then trying to hold our relationships, the people in our lives, up to an impossible standard of perfection. So in Libra, she's likely stirring up, relationship shadows, right? She sort of holds the blind spot, the part of ourselves we don't see clearly. And she is often the more radical expression of the divine feminine here. So, really pay attention if that's being triggered for you. And wherever Libra is in your chart, the moon has also triggered her already. So, possibly yesterday, maybe as early as yesterday was Thursday. So maybe Wednesday evening, maybe trigger pointed something in one of your relationships. Eclipses coming up. Indeed, it's a partial solar eclipse coming up. Lunar eclipse coming up. J-Lo, so interesting as my progress chart just hit Sun sextile radix vertex. Ooh, that makes me think someone's coming into your life that might have an impact on you. Pauline, Mercury in post retro till the end of September. Yep, I still see the glimpses too. J-Lo says, sitting right on top of my Pluto. So much great information here. You guys are getting good at this stuff. Good morning, Jacqueline Tyler. And your camera's not working. But hopefully you're hearing my voice. And maybe you have to go out and come back in, J-Lo says, and that's true. Sometimes that happens. All right. So without further ado, let's dive in to what Mars in Cancer holds for us. Now, Mars moved into Cancer on Wednesday late or Thursday yesterday, depending on the time zone that you're in. And that moves the energy out of the fire of, or out of the air of Gemini and into the watery realm of Cancer. And Mars is a fire planet. So now we have fire and water. And what do we do with fire and water? Well, either water puts out the fire, or if we can harness the energy of the fire, we can put it to work heating up the water and turning the water into steam, right? Releasing energy. So it's helpful sometimes to think about it in a purely um, sort of physics sort of way, a scientific sort of way. Um, he will be in Cancer this time, right now, until November 4th or 5th, depending on your time zone. So he's got a longer period of time that he's sitting here because he's slowing down, right? He's slowing down to greet his retrograde cycle. It appears that he's slowing down. He really isn't, but it appears like that to us. Now, when the fiery, action oriented energy moves into the more sensitive, emotional, nurturing realm of Cancer, we have some very specific themes that come up for all of us. And for whatever place that it is in your chart, this is where this action piece is going to be happening. So again, if you have your chart with you, take a look at where Cancer is. Cancer is this symbol right here, right? She kind of looks like a crab laying there. And that is the on the outer wheel of your chart. And this would be the house, this pie-shaped piece right here. So if this chart were a person, this would be happening in their 11th house, right? You can just barely see the little 11 there. So that speaks to the area of life that Mars will be transiting through, albeit slowly over the next couple of months, and be calling attention to the issues of that house, bringing up the emotional piece in that house. So, some of the key themes here are about emotional action. So, we have heightened emotional sensitivity. Mars is a catalyst, he burns hot and he's burning in the sign of emotions. So, typically, he's assertive and he's direct, but he becomes more influenced by the emotional realm during this time. So, people and their feelings, including you, but others that you are in relationship with, might be more influenced by your emotions. And sometimes this becomes up as a passive aggression, right? Where, we're afraid perhaps to speak to the full on feeling that we're feeling. So we kind of, like the Cancer crab, we walk sideways around it, never quite getting to the point, and then getting mad or pissed off when someone doesn't understand what we're talking about because we're talking in circles instead of coming right out and saying, what is on our mind. But it can also trigger our more protective, nurturing aspects, right? Where we care for our loved ones, where we become more mama bearish kind of energy, which, remember, that can easily get misplaced. If especially if we're taking responsibility for something that isn't ours, right? That our children are grown and they have to make their own mistakes, but mama bear swoops in and saves the day. And our children, lose a valuable opportunity to learn a lesson, perhaps. So be careful of that overly protective energy. Let's go back to passive aggressive tendencies, because Cancer energy, the energy in Cancer in the house that it's in your chart, is a place where you might often retreat rather than confront, right? So maybe expressing frustration or anger or assertiveness indirectly, right? Rather than right on. So there could be a tendency for people to be more moody and more triggering, more passive aggressive in their addressing issues straight on. So you might find yourself in the position of being that way or others being that way around you. So pay attention to that because frustration is just simmering right there below the surface. Um, Cancer is a sign that rules the home and family and our foundations, right? So there's a certain amount of protectiveness and home focus that comes with Mars's transit through here, where we may jump to the defense of our loved ones, where we may be interested in home improvements, doing the things that we need to do to improve how it feels in our home, maybe renovations, maybe moving. There's also a nostalgic air that comes from Cancer energy. So you're cleaning up. You're like we just did this huge move with my daughter, and it also triggered as you're cleaning and boxing up things. Right, you come across old photos, you come across albums, right? Things that you'd put away that you wanted to save, memorabilia type of things. And so we walk down a little bit of a nostalgic path. And if it is a place where sometimes we can get caught up in the feelings of the past and forget that we actually are in this now. There's nothing wrong with being nostalgic. There's nothing wrong in looking back at those old pictures and, kind of taking a whimsical look at your life, as long as you remember to stay oriented here and now and create what is coming for you in your future. Now, Cancer is also one of the signs that is very much aware or needs security and safety kind of feeling. So there's a balancing of the security and courage it takes to take action. And you might imagine there's a little bit of a rub here because, on one hand, we like security. Like we like to know where the money's coming from, that all the bills are paid, where the next meal is coming from, da da da, on and on, whatever it is in your life that feels security oriented. But that can also prevent us from using the courage of Mars to take the next steps forward in our evolution, right? So watch for that. There's the emotional courage that it takes sometimes to confront or to, risk even conflict if there's something that has to be said in a difficult conversation, perhaps, or standing up for your own feelings and your own emotional health during this period of time. There's also the potential, though, for healing of old wounds. That's a big deal because remember, we already talked about Chiron is in Aries, and Aries is a sign ruled by Mars. So naturally, that healing energy or the wounding energy, depending again on where you are in your own cycle, can be pulled into this transit of Mars through Cancer. We're going to talk a little bit more about that in a minute. So, Cancer is tied to memory and the past. So, Mars and Cancer could stir up old stuff, right? Old emotional wounds. The transit can provide us an opportunity to take action in a new way, to heal those wounds, to resolve past hurts or family issues. Okay. It's really powerful for that, as long as you're not succumbing constantly to the wound, right? So be watchful for that. Tackle your emotional blocks during this period of time. It's great to confront where it is that you are being prevented from moving forward from some powerful emotion, some powerful fear, some powerful lack or feeling of scarcity. And then allow a more compassionate approach to yourself in the process of confronting all of this energy, right? Water signs are also creative signs. Mars is also a creative planet. He is so we have emotional expression perhaps through creativity in this case. And Cancer has that nurturing creative energy combined with Mars drive and ambition. So they could be a surge in emotional or intuitive creative expression, right? Creation in human design, we always talk about the solar plexus, the center for emotions, as the cradle of creation, right? It is where the creative process starts, and then it moves upward through the different centers to the throat to become expressed in the world, out in the the physical world. So maybe use your emotional energy as fuel for your art, for your writing, for your business, or whatever outlets that are creative for you. We're being invited to channel that emotional energy into a very productive, creative expression in our lives. Now, there are some challenges which I've kind of built in here as we've been talking about them. But the first big challenge is internal conflict. Remember, I said Cancer is a sign ruled by the moon, and the moon is about our inner world. And our inner world here, we might have Mars assertiveness stirring up the pot of the stifled Cancer emotional self or emotional situations that you haven't fully dealt with. And that can lead you to internal frustration. So it's harder at this point in time, really, to express anger or to assert yourself because of the internal conflict. So you have to work with your internal self and navigate the mood swings that are endemic through any transit of a planet through Cancer, right? It brings us into connection with the moon and the various moods of the moon. So, the fluctuating moods of Cancer can make actions feel inconsistent. You might feel like your energy levels wax and wane, get bigger, and you have a lot of energy, and then you're pooped and you're laying flat, right? So, that's really an effect of all of this emotional energy that is impacting all of us, right? So, it is a good time to give you a reminder about being good to yourself. Definitely include self-care and nurturing of yourself during this period of time. And remember, he's initially in Cancer from yesterday or the day before, all the way till November 4th and 5th. He'll be making his transition then into the sign of Leo, but he doesn't get all that far before he retrogrades back. Well, he does get pretty far, and then he retrogrades backward to Cancer once more, and we'll go into that a little bit here in the future. Uh, so any questions out there? I gotta go further. There we go. Okay, I don't see any questions. Chop wood, carry water, boil water, make tea. I love that. That's great, Tom. Cancer in series house 3. So you're going to pay attention when I talk about the houses. And in fact, I think I'll talk about the houses next. Good morning, Tammy Smith. It's so good to have you join us this morning. And she has Cancer in her 8th house. Transformation is afoot. All right, things are changing. Body parts for Cancer. That's a good question. So now we're not only dealing with body parts that the parts of the body parts sounds like we've discombobulated somebody. Uh, the sign of Cancer rules the stomach and everything to do with the stomach, right? And that, the first part of digestion. First part of digestion's in the mouth, but the stomach completes the digestion process, then pushes the food further down, where another sign takes over that. And it is also part of the moon's job to rule the breasts and the chest. And so Cancer is also a part of that. And then we also have Mars involved. And Mars is Aries ruled parts of the body. So the head, and the eyes, the ears, the mouth, um, the nose in some respects, and also in Scorpio can have something to do with the last part of the digestion where the waste products are removed from the body, right? So sort of symbolic of letting go of the baggage, right? Letting go of the waste. And of course, our tendency to hold on to stuff like that too, right? Sometimes dealing with that. So that was a good question too. And Pauline also points out the digestion system is ancestral issues. Interesting because the 4th house, Cancer, ruled 4th house, moon ruling Cancer and 4th house has to do with our ancestry, right? Our genetics, maybe even our family lineage. So they're all tied together. So, okay, I'll come back to that one. Let's look at Cancer through the houses. So if you know where Cancer is in your chart, these are some of the ways in which Mars can manifest in that house, right, through Cancer. So if you have Cancer on the first house, which would mean you have a rising sign in Cancer, I do. And a couple of you out there I know do. A couple people in my family also have Cancer rising signs. This is a house of the self and identity and your personal drive, right? The personal drive to move forward. So you could experience an increase in your emotional assertiveness, meaning that it makes us feel more like expressing our emotions. We may be focused on our feelings and expressing our feelings and defending. That would be a little more of the negative part of that, defending your personal identity. Now, it's a good thing to defend your personal identity, you know, to yourself, right? Keep always, aligning with your own personal identity, in a way that empowers you. But it's not necessarily a positive thing to say you need to defend yourself to others, right? Because you're meant to have strength in your own person. You may also project a more nurturing and protective image, but also be subjected to mood swings, right? I'm used to that. I have Cancer on the rise. If you have Cancer on the rise, you know what I'm talking about. Those mood swings come and go. Your physical energy here, though, in the first house can fluctuate with your emotional states. So, assertiveness may come with a burst of energy, and then the burst of energy is petered out, and the next thing you're in this emotional slump. So, you might have strong motivation from your emotions to act. You take that action, but you also need to remember that, that can become exhausting, right? So take time for rest and take time to refresh, renew, rejuvenate yourself, okay? Replenish your energy. If you have this Cancer in the second house, this is a house of money and value, your worth, what you value, and material security, right? It has a very Taurus flavor, even though we're now talking Cancer. So this can be all about paying attention to your emotional spending. People with this in the second house may feel more compelled to spend money to create emotional security or comfort at home. So there's a strong link between the financial decisions and emotional needs during this transit. So literally, all you really need to do is bring awareness to why it is that you want to buy something. Is it coming from an emotional need? Is it coming from the feeling that I have an emotional hole that I'm trying to fill? Or is this something that truly brings me joy or something I really do need because it's the one I have is broken or no longer useful? So balance, right? This idea of material comfort and purchasing from emotional kind of knee jerk reaction energy. It is also about protecting your resources. So this might be a good time to protect your money. Maybe do a financial check in, right? Ask your financial advisor if your money is in the right places, or is your money, in danger? Do you have leaks in your financial life that you're hemorrhaging some money? Take a look at that. Emotional attachment to possessions can also increase during this time. Like maybe you're cleaning out that closet and you find your old favorite blankie. It's holey and smelly, and you're like, "Oh, but I can't let go of this." I say it that way because my grandson, this when we were moving them this past weekend, there's a blanket that they have that their dog who passed away a few months back. Uh, it was her favorite blanket, but it smells like dog. But he won't let my daughter throw it away because it reminds him of Baker. So that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. Our emotional connection to possessions in the second house, Cancer could possibly be a problem, right? You're holding on to a smelly blanket, yet you can't wash it because if you do, the smell is gone. Now the emotional connection is gone. So what do? You have to decide, is it worth it for me to hold on to this smelly thing, or this old thing, or is it okay to let it go? And, make room for new, right? Making room for the new. Also, remember the second house, your value and your self worth gets brought up, right? Mars, there could be a lot of emotional triggers around those two things, your ability to feel worthy to receive, and also to see that you are aligned with your values. The third house, Mars in Cancer, communication, learning, siblings, the mind, thinking, All of this is about emotional communication, perhaps. Communication becomes emotionally charged in Cancer, right? And this is, if you have Cancer on your third house, this is already a part of your experience. And now with Mars going through here, though, you may start expressing yourself more protectively or more defensively, especially in everyday interactions with people. Maybe your siblings or your neighbors or your colleagues. Maybe you're more easily triggered by the things that they say or the things that they do, or through things that are written, right? Written or verbal communication. So watch for your reactions to what people say or what you see in writing, right? Because it could be that you're over the top emotionally here, that your protective instincts or your defensive instincts have been triggered. There can also be, this is a third house I always think of as growth through education. And it's the growth of the mind, right? Our how we think. And we're adding new information, so we're adding new ways of thinking. There's also a bit of logic here, perhaps. Cancer, it does have, interestingly enough, in human design, we see Cancer in the logic circuit a couple of different times through the gates. So there is some, real energy around the thought processes here. But we may find that we have a stronger emotional investment in learning specific things or in expressing our ideas, particularly when we are discussing topics that we feel personally connected to. And of course, we're looking at political season here. This is a huge time for Mars to go through your communication house. Can mean, that maybe inserting foot in mouth more often it can be a problem, right? So watch how you're communicating and watch how you get triggered by other people's communications with you. This can really lead to passionate debates or mood driven kinds of interactions with people. But again, you also need to realize everybody's entitled to their own ideas and opinions. And unless you really want to get drug into a fight, watch what you say and watch your reactions to what other people say. The fourth house now, fourth house would be home, family, and roots, right? This is your foundation energy. So if you have Cancer in the fourth house, your focus already in your life has been on home and family. Whether there were issues in home and family that upset your security or your sense of safety, or whether you had come from a very safe and secure foundation. Now, Mars moving through Cancer in your fourth house amplifies the need to protect and nurture your family and your home life. You might feel driven to take action within the home. Maybe it's time to sell your home. Maybe it's time to renovate something in your home. Maybe it's time to move. Maybe you're relocating, right? Or creating a more emotionally secure environment through whatever means that is that's happening for you. But it can also bring up family conflict. Mars, conflict, confrontation. So the tensions in families can be a little exacerbated at this time, especially around emotional issues, right? Things that emotional blow ups from the past, or the feelings that keep getting triggered in families. So there's a strong desire for you with Mars moving through the fourth house to defend your own emotional territory within your family. And that could be the source of conflict, but it can also be other family members trying to defend their own emotional territory that create the conflict within you. Either way you look at it, this is a place to really look at what the power of response is in your family situations, right? If you get triggered and you just blurt or react, it's not going to go as well as if you were able to take a beat, take a breath, and decide whether you need to reply or respond in that emotional way, or whether you could just let it roll off your back, or whether there is a better, more calmer conversation that could be had with your family during this period of time. All right. Fifth house, creativity, romance, and children. This is the house of risk taking, love affairs, It is emotional creativity. This is very juicy feeling. If you have Cancer on your fifth house, you're used to bursts of emotional creative energy that becomes very creative. But Mars energizes this creative energy in this fifth house. So your creative pursuits can become more fulfilling. Maybe, right? You finally put the finishing touches on this painting that you've not been able to complete, or this project that you've been building that you've not been able to complete. And you may be drawn to express your emotions through art, whatever art that is, or through your hobbies or other creative outlets, right? Emotion gets put in it, and it's very creative. It generates the creative energy. And this is also where protection in love, or protective in love, protection, I need protection, or I am protective of my loved ones. In romantic relationships, there can be a heightened sense of wanting to protect, to nurture, to defend, right? There's also the emotional focus on children. While this is nurturing and the instincts are nurturing, they're also amplified, but can also then turn into that mothering that we've talked about before, right? This isn't specifically about mothering, but because our children are in this fifth house, it could be how we want to protect them, keep them safe from the outside world, or the need to do that if we have not yet done that. I also want to bring up the word boundaries here. In the fifth house, sometimes it is this, it's a Leo house, right? It's Leo rules it in the natural uh, chart. So it could be a place where sometimes this creativity and self expression knows no bounds. And with Mars moving through here and having Cancer there on that fifth house, it's time to bring in those boundaries, both for your children, for yourself. And they could be emotional boundaries, right? It could be just emotional boundaries. Sixth house is work, health, daily routine, how you service, how you share in a way of service your gifts and talents in the world. So there is an emotional though focus on health here, and Mars in Cancer encourages us to take action on our health issues, especially issues that are emotionally driven. That could be digestive upsets. That could be a lot of different places in your body where anxiety is stored, right? In the mind, in the heart, in the stomach, even in our limbs, right? At times we're holding this tenseness. My shoulders are often up under my ears when I'm tense. Relax, right? Find a way to relax. Emotional well being may be have a direct impact on your physical health, right? So we might be, if you have sixth house Cancer, you may be exploring the impact of emotions on your actual physical body. But there's also this workplace energy that comes up with the sixth house, right? This is the environment that you live in, you work in, and that environment sensitivity is impacted here with Mars moving through here. You may feel more impacted by the energies of the people experiencing emotional energy in your workplace, right? There could be more, jockeying around, people trying to protect themselves or defend themselves against a change or a perceived intrusion of your energy into their work that makes them feel more protective or needing to be more protective of themselves. And it could possibly lead to arguments in the workplace if it's not dealt with correctly, right? Always taking a look at, well, what is my emotional energy here? What am I reacting to? And what is my coworker reacting to? So that could be a really good time for you with this in the sixth house to bring in this energy of compassion, right? Compassion for yourself and for your worker, your coworker that is feeling somewhat defensive or in need of protecting themselves. Um, Seventh house is relationships and partnerships. So now we take it into the personal, right? If you have Cancer on the seventh house, then this is impacting your marriage, perhaps, or your significant other relationships, maybe your business partnerships, or those people that are in close relationship to you. And this could be emotional defensiveness in relationships. Mars in the seventh house really highlights the need for that emotional closeness. We want to be connected, And yet, that could be the very source of triggers in our defensiveness or in our emotional protectiveness, right? Those things keep coming up because that's what Cancer rules. And again, leading to arguments if our emotional needs are not being met. But whose job is it to meet your emotional needs? It's not someone outside of you. There's your hint, right? The eighth house is the house of shared resources. So that can be things like inheritances or your spouse's income or taxes and credits and things like that, legacies. Those are shared resources. It is also the house of intimacy, where we share of our deepest selves with others. And it is the house of death and rebirth, or let's call it transformation. So here we bring up power struggles in the emotional world. Mars coming through here can trigger these emotional power struggles, especially around shared resources or intimacy or places where we feel like we don't have enough. I think enoughness becomes um, another trigger point in this eighth house where, you know, we perceive perhaps that, our significant other isn't contributing enough into the shared resource pool. And then we may feel the need to defend our selves. There's a certain amount of emotional vulnerability here in this eighth house. So either we have this wall around us protecting us, like the hard shell of the Cancer crab, where we want people in our lives, but we, hold them a little bit at arm's length, right? So this might be a time for you to take a look at what those protective boundaries are doing in your relationships. Are they keeping you from having those really juicy emotional connections? Are they keeping you safe? I mean, there's that potential as well. But then it becomes a potential for emotional healing. That's the eighth house, can be very healing. It can drive you toward emotional or confronting your emotional wounds and any unresolved feelings that you may have in order to experience deep emotional well being and psychological healing too as well. The eighth house does deal with that. But there's an urge to protect what feels emotionally significant in your intimate relationships and or protect your vulnerability during transformative things that are going on in your life. So I think of this for you as a time where changes are on the horizon or are in action, and you may be feeling a little bit protective of holding on to what has been rather than letting that go and move on into what could be. Okay. If you have Cancer in the ninth house, this house deals with beliefs and higher learning, travel, our broadening of our horizons, right? Seeing things from the perspective of the higher self. So the emotional drive here will be in your belief system, in your philosophy of beliefs. It makes people emotionally motivated to defend their beliefs and their philosophies, their spiritual views, their political views, their views on family. And that could become a source of confrontation and conflict with others. So if you're feeling a strong need to protect what is yours in terms of beliefs, it could become defensive if somebody challenges those beliefs, right? And ideally, what's happening here is your ability to tap in and see what that emotional connection is that you have to that belief. And is it real, right? Is there a real need to protect that belief within you? What's threatened in your belief system? And then there's also an emotional connection to travel. This is the house that loves travel, right? Long distance travel, really not just like let's go here or there in our neighborhoods, but let's go to a foreign country or let's drive from here, on the west coast of a country to the east coast of the country, see something different. So we may feel drawn if you have a ninth house Mars in Cancer to travel. to go to significant places maybe that hold an emotional connection for you. Maybe places like where your family roots are from, right? Your family roots are in Scotland and you decide you want to travel to Scotland to explore, what maybe your family had experienced. It can also involve emotional exploration through higher education or through your spiritual practices. This is what's getting bigger, right? Your spiritual practice, your connection to your beliefs, etc. If you have Mars in Cancer, or you have Mars transiting through Cancer in your 10th house, now we've moved to career, your public image, your authority, right? Who you stand out as in the world. And there's a lot of emotional motivation here to provide more in your career or your professional world. So maybe more sensitive to career matters as well. Maybe you feel deeply invested in your public image or in your profession, and you take actions that are meant to support that image, or actions in the workplace that are motivated by your emotional need to be seen, or to be recognized for your authority. So that could be a slippery slope, right? Because that means maybe you're acting out of a need to gain recognition rather than acting out of a sense of this is my true authority. So watch that one in the 10th house. There can also be defensiveness in authority where conflicts with authority figures could occur, especially if emotional boundaries are sort of crossed, right? Your boss comes to you, he's in a huff, she's in a huff, and she says, I don't like the work you've been doing. You get emotionally triggered because you invested a lot of time and energy into providing the best job that you could. And now you feel like you have to protect yourself here against that emotional response or against that emotional reactivity. So, especially if you're emotionally invested in your work or in your ideals about your authority in the work world. If someone comes and brings up something that triggers you emotionally in the workplace, especially in your sense of who you are as an authority figure in your workplace, it could lead to emotional conflicts, which are never okay in the career professional world, right? It could also be with clients or customers of yours. So be careful here. Defensiveness, it's okay to defend your reputation if you're being beleaguered by somebody that's assaulting your integrity, let's say, in your workplace or in the job that you've done or your professional standing. Yes, defend yourself, right? Because you know that you have these credentials, but don't get drawn into an emotional battle with someone over that. Stand in your own power. This is the house of your own power, right? The 11th house is about friendships and groups, social causes, humanitarian causes are part of that. So if you have a 11th house Cancer, then this is your emotional connection to the groups that you are a part of. Mars here is going to encourage people to act on behalf of the groups, of the social causes, right? Or the humanitarian causes that you are feeling emotionally connected to, and also maybe feeling more protective or nurturing towards your friends, your networks of people, your communities that you are involved with. And maybe you feel driven to nurture those connections more during Mars's transit through here. But it can also, on the other end, bring up emotional tension in your friendships. It can bring it to the surface in a way like, let's say, for example, you're in a group meeting and your friend says something that you take personally as an affront, and now the whole group is involved in this, battle or this emotional upset that is between you and your friend. So we have to kind of watch that in this 11th house because you're dealing with others, right? And that means that you're getting involved with other people's triggers, perhaps, or in other people triggering you. So you want to be careful there, being nurturing and supportive as opposed to being defensive and overly protected or protective. But it could also expose the emotional tensions between you and the people in your life, right? Your friends. So watch that sensitivity. There could be real emotional um, feelings that come up over slights, right? A slight, somebody, you feel slighted by somebody, and that triggers an emotional response. Finally, the 12th house is the subconscious mind. It is your spirituality. It's your divine self, right? The 12th house is your divine self. And it's also the hidden things, right? The hidden things that are in that 12th house that we don't see clearly. And if you have a 12th house Cancer, there could be a lot of issues hiding in your emotions, emotional triggers that are, being held back. So it'll be a great time for you for emotional healing and reflection, right? If Mars is moving through that 12th house, it is driving up to the surface those things that are hiding beneath the surface, right? So it's a period for emotional healing where unresolved feelings can actually surface for introspection, for release, right? So that's a good thing. This is also a very intuitive house. It's a place where we really tap into something that is more primal, perhaps, or more hidden from us. It's a intuitive, right? Intuition, gut instinct. We may act more on that intuition if you have a 12th house Cancer with Mars moving through here during this time. We may feel more protective around our spiritual practices or our inner world. It is a place of withdrawal in the 12th house. So maybe we're holding back some of um, our feelings, right? We're afraid to express them. And there could be some emotional restlessness that comes to the surface during this time, especially if you have been practicing repression in your emotions. So, in the end, what we have here is that Cancer is aspecting a house in your chart. And depending where this emotional and protective energy is in your life, will determine how this, is going to show up. So, moodiness, intuition, emotions, defensiveness, protection, nurturing, compassion, growth, and this idea of, elevating our emotional energy to become more aware of how we express our emotions, all a part of this transit. All right. So that is it for me today. I know this went a little bit over, but hopefully everybody got an idea of how this is impacting them. If you have any questions about that, certainly reach out for me. Don't forget to sign up for the Introduction to the Gene Keys course, and I will see you on Monday morning. Thank you, everybody. Take care. Bye for now.